It was noontime today in the center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're going to talk about prepping for the long term, right? Like how is it really sustainable? You know, a lot of us are like, yeah, I have 3 months of food or whatever, but okay, then what? You know, you have to have like a bigger play. Um I do want to kind of narrow it down and focus into the nitty gritty, the meat of it, like actionable steps. But
Mhm.
I know I end up kind of doing like a broad overview because I'm like, don't forget this, don't forget that, don't forget that, and that's so important. But I think there's things that we could be doing that really would be a plan that's focused directly on long term. But kind of I want to talk a little bit at kind of even how to get into it, how to start it, how to approach it, I guess is where I want to go with that. And how we can really have a plan that's going to last. And I think a lot of it really comes down to homesteading. I don't know if there's any guaranteed place you could flee to or run. You know, people are like, oh, I'll go to Belize or I'll go to whatever. Well, that may be, but it's like Belize, or if Belize turns bad, I'll go to the Philippines, or if that turns bad, I'll go to, it could be anywhere.
Right.
And so you kind of have to make a stand at some point. I think it comes down to that. I know the Americans in the late 1700s kind of came to a conclusion like that of how long do we keep running?
Mhm.
America was kind of founded with that. Hey, Puritans, hey, let's escape all this oppressive stuff. We'll go completely to the other side of the world
Yeah.
and then
That
we'll be
still didn't work
safe.
out.
And then it
Wasn't
didn't
far enough.
work out. And then it's like, oh, maybe we should do something bigger, Maybe we
Mhm.
should take a stand. And to me, that's always my thing in my heart. But I know that we have let this country we live in get a little bit corrupted. People have let it go for a little while without maintenance. You'd mentioned last week about hard times create hard men and soft
Mhm.
times create soft men. But so that's the thing. I think creating a homestead is really what it gets down to. So that's where I want to jump in and really talk about is how do we lay out a property? I think the first thing that comes to mind is people are like, well, I can't just uproot and move to the country, right? I mean, that's the argument you always get, or at
Right.
least if you're in the city talking to your city friends, that's the
Mhm.
argument.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
I'll agree with
I
you.
live out in the sticks. Everyone's like, yeah, I can get a country house. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I see. But one is getting property even affordable. Is it attainable? That's part of it. Uh, I was always when I was young very big in and young I mean 18, 20, 25. In those younger years, very into Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, or
Right.
Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill, and more so like I think Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich is more the mindset, but Robert Kiyosaki and a lot of his stuff would talk about, hey, if you there are ways to get property without having a lot of money. There's creative ways. And
Mhm.
it's funny cuz back in the day it used to be really easy for for you to go into a lender, and it was weird, you just had to know the right guy to ask. If you
Mhm.
found a mortgage broker, they could get anybody financing for anything, and they could write it up and they'd be like, you don't have a down payment, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out. Like,
Mhm.
because they would just write it up in a sketchy way. Like, say you wanted $100,000 piece of property, they'd basically find a way to write it up that it was $125,000 piece of property, but you're putting 25 down,
Right.
on paper, and it would just kind of work out. There was always creative ways to do it. Then after the big scandal of, and that's a whole other episode of how 2009 collapse happened when they were giving mortgages to anybody who couldn't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, we're about to do the same exact thing. This is our new plan of we're going to make it so that everybody gets a mortgage.
Right.
That's the big thing. I mean, maybe this is the perfect time to buy your homestead is if Kamala wins,
Mm-hmm.
she's going to be giving you 25,000, which I think is very weird because how is she giving you 25,000 when like does she have that much money, Kevin? Is she that
She's rich, man. She's
Trump is
rich.
rich? She's like Trump is really rich, but she's giving everybody 25,000. She said, "I will give you," and I'm like, "Where are you getting that money?"
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
I don't
that's
know.
exciting. These are exciting times when
Yeah.
politicians are just giving away money. Like, I wish I had enough money that I could run for office and then just give it to everybody. Be
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? I love you guys, and I'm going to help out. I'm going to lower prices, and
Let
I'm
me
just going
get
to
my
give everybody
checkbook right
cash.
now.
I got money. I got my purse in the car. It's going to be great. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't want to get lost in the weeds, but that stuff just excites me. But actually, I mean, in a way, that is a good thing, right? So there's your down payment money. So you could buy something. Now you're like, well, Chuck, Kamala Harris isn't really going to win. Trump's going to win. Well, but you know that if Trump wins, they're just going to overturn it and throw him out for some reason or another. And she'll be back in. You don't even need to worry about it. She got you. She's going to get that 25 grand into your pocket.
She's got you covered.
She's got you covered.
Yeah. So if we're going to buy a homestead, say
Yeah.
I live in the city, whatever city it is, and like, I really want to get into homesteading, get out of this rat race. I need to find a piece of property. I've got X amount of money. I could sell my house and I'll have X amount of money. And
Right.
let's see what I could get. What do I want to find when I'm looking for a piece of land?
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. So to be honest, right? One, I think the number one thing that I look at is do they have an HOA? Do they have building codes in that community? Do they have favorable laws that are going to allow me to live the best life I can live? Now, it's almost impossible in America to now find a place where you're not going to pay stupid taxes, right? And I mean some kind of high amount of property taxes, right? But maybe they have high vehicle taxes, but maybe I only have one crappy car on the road, and that doesn't even matter. Like, I'm not even planning on going into town hardly ever because I'm going to be crazy mountain man and grow a beard, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
might
Maybe you want to go to the places that have a higher state income tax or a higher sales tax and lower property taxes.
Right, because maybe I'm not buying stuff because I'm growing everything on my homestead, right? I mean, that's an option. So anyway, think about it like that. But all right, so first is like, do I have like HOA restrictions? There's a town. I live outside of the big town, and the town is like 200 people. And the town, you're like, oh, it's country. Everybody's got like a half-acre lot in town in the main city strip. It's only got a post office, a hardware store, and a car garage. Those are our three things. And then on the way out, there's a gas station and then like $5 Generals. Cause I mean,
right. They've been putting those things everywhere lately.
Those things, you can't go a mile because they're like, well, these people walk. I can tell. So like for every 5 people, we have a Dollar General. I mean, it might be Dollar General, Dollar Tree, or whatever the other one is.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I know what you're talking about though. There's about 5 of those dollar things.
But I do have I have 2 Dollar General choices, specifically Dollar General, within 3 miles in either direction. So it's like 6 miles apart.
Now, is it me? Maybe I'm in a weird spot, but is it me, or does it seem like everybody that works in the Dollar General stores is like serious white trash?
Kevin, you're not supposed to say that about
Maybe
my
it's in my area. I mean, I shop there. I'm white
Kevin,
trash. I'll
these
admit
are my
that.
friends.
But it definitely seems like that's the situation.
There is a lack of dental care if you work in dentistry. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Kevin,
they don't have a dental plan.
You're a horrible person. I'm just saying that right now. Anyway, so you want to think about, all right, what I was going to get at is even in the tiny town, you can't have chickens
Mhm.
and you can't have like all these things are like, so my point is you want to actually, Kevin, I think we just lost 3 listeners while you gave that Dollar General tea thing. So I'm just saying people are worried. But anyway, you want to check into what restrictions you might have. And like I said, some things may not be a problem. Obviously, the more government um, control of anything will mean that they're going to be quicker to adapt to new government restrictions in the future, right? Somebody who's more about freedom, you're more likely to get not more freedom, but it's more likely that freedom's going to maintain, right? So we'll
Right.
go with that. So definitely you want to think of that. I know that there's the Cato Cato Institute actually does an economic freedom of the world, and they actually have a state map of the United States where you can look at different states and restrictions and things you might want to choose.
Mhm.
So anyway, with that, we now found the right state, the right community. Now, like you said, how about the property? What are we looking for? The big thing, if you're thinking about farming, livestock, and self-sufficiency, you're probably thinking, I need water. Water,
Right.
foundation of life, right?
Mhm.
Um, well, maybe that's carbon. I don't know. Anyway, water is crucial. And so I'm going to look for, do I have a cool stream? Is it on the ocean? Is it something? What kind of water do I have access to? But the big thing, it can just be a good well. And it could be cheap municipal water if that's, how close you want to be.
Mhm.
Obviously, you're not self-sufficient if it's
If
community
you're
water.
relying on community water, right?
But again, you decide the line that you're willing to draw. I would think I want a quality well on my property. Now, these can be drilled and dealt with, but it's a whole lot better if it's already there. And it's a whole lot better if you know that it's going to be available. All right.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, if you find that it has a magic spring on it that's just flowing up water from the earth, even better, But
Right.
again, it's you're going to weigh your price and your budget and look for something like that. So that I think the minimum, as I mentioned, is about an acre. An acre seems like what you could grow. Obviously, the more land, the better, right? The more
Right.
privacy I can build between me and my neighbors and whatever is kind of cooler to me.
Right.
Now, Kevin had mentioned, you could find like a lot in town, kind of, in the city or whatever. You might be able to find somewhere that you can have a garden and set up things. Now, you do have to worry about municipal governments and restrictions and things like that with the more, the closer you are in town, but you have options. Um, I actually went and tilled a field for a lady in town yesterday, and she's in a bigger town. Um, and I went down there and she has an acre lot. Her son, I think, has like some big 18 wheelers or something like that on there that, they use for storage and whatever. So she fenced out a big garden plot for herself. It might be 2 acres, I don't know. And, she came up with um, a big garden plot, and no joke, people are going in and stealing her vegetables when she's not there. And
What?
I'm like, "Really? That's like a thing?" And people are like, "Oh, well, is there a fancy development next door?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there is." And they're like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And I'm like, "How? How is that make sense?" Like, who's like, "Well, I'm down for stealing, but I really like quality foods?"
Yeah. I only steal organic.
Yeah, exactly, right? So they went in, like, wiped out all her green beans, all that kind of stuff. So that's something to be aware of, right? And she's setting up cameras and whatever. I mean, it's going to work out. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is, you have to think of predators, right? What kind
Yeah.
of predators are going to be getting into my yard? Um,
And most predators you can deal with a shotgun full of rock salt. I'm just saying.
you're just saying,
If your predator is a neighbor.
yeah, yeah. So all right, so something like that. So you need to think about security. You're going to think about, your town municipal laws, you're going to think about water. Now, the next thing you're going to want to think about is the type of soil and sand. Now, obviously, you can amend and treat soil and sand and clay and whatever it is kind of earth that you have there, but how much work is that going to be? And again, this is just going into what can you afford and what's the best option for you. When I bought my property, we were very focused on gardening and farming, and the wife had gotten some soil samples and actually taken tests,
Mm-hmm.
sent them away to be checked out before we bought the property. That's something you might want to consider. Like you could really, and again, some things are like, oh, this doesn't have good pH, this has whatever. Is that something I can easily amend and treat, or is that something that's going to be a problem? Um, my wife watches, there's a YouTube channel. I mean, I've seen quite a few of them because we watch things together, but that Roots and Refuge. And this girl, she ended up buying a bunch of bad fertilizer one of the years, and it contaminated her soil. And she ended up, like, part of her thing is like recovering from that. And
Mm-hmm.
her whole focus is how we brought the soil back to good stuff and,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. But you may want to investigate all that beforehand. All right. Now moving on to step 2. So what kind of things, or step 3, 4, I don't know where we're at, but would you put into the homestead to actually make it, sustainable, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my big thing is, like, if I was starting out young, I would kind of save up that money. It turns out kids now can, like, stay at home with their parents till they're like 27, and that's acceptable and normal for
Yeah.
society.
Yeah.
Like, you just forever, like, I don't even know,
It's
but I would save up a little nest egg to buy some property.
yeah.
As soon as I could get property, I would buy some, and I would, one, even if you just buy it and hold it, then I would, like, and again, you want to get a piece of property that's worth developing, right? It's okay to move and go later, but you don't want to put a lot of effort into something. Well, this is what I could afford. And I understand just wanting something, but make sure it's something like at least an acre and something that you can do stuff, right?
Right.
Next, part 2, I would just buy the property. And I mean, to me, if I'm young kid, I'd just live on it. I'm assuming if you're past young kid age and just starting out with money, I'm assuming if you're past that, you probably have enough if you sold your house to have some equity to go buy something with already a structure on it and some stuff going on. But
Yeah.
if I was starting out from scratch, the little nest egg, and I'd be willing to live in a tent or a camper, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
start out there, and then I'd get a well put on it. And then I'd look at solar. How am I going to set that up? Then I'd work out a septic. Ideally you find a property with like a crappy trailer on it, because then you got the well and septic and the electric hookup already there. But who knows? And there's a lot of crappy trailers that you're starting there, but you can expand with a lot of the heavy infrastructure already in place.
Mm-hmm.
Something to look for. You do you, right? Um, Next, and I would, like, build up. I would just start adding things. Hey, what do we need? Being able to go to the bathroom is huge, right? So you might start out with just an outhouse, but then, all right, now we have a shower and real plumbing. Metal buildings are like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy a metal building for like 10 grand and then go to the next thing. It might not be the size of the house that you want or whatever, and you're saying, oh, 10 grand's a lot. Well, yeah, but remember, Kamala Harris is giving you 25.
Well,
So I'm just saying,
you're already there, man.
no, but they'll finance that. And again, I would try not to finance things. I'd try and do everything for cash.
Yeah.
Again, that year or two of building up and saving when you're living with mom and dad, I'm just saying. Or, like I said, I think most people established in life probably have 25 grand equity in their house that they
Mm-hmm.
could just sell it and start over, right? Um, Again, assuming you don't already have. I'm talking about from ground zero. Then I would set up some kind of, I would set up electricity. So some kind of solar setup and something where I could be sustainable and completely self-sufficient with that. I would be working on somewhere safe to store my supplies where they're not going to be overridden with mice and rodents and things like that, right? Like a quality shed.
Hmm.
That's not a big deal, right? It's not that hard. We can get there. Then, and I would keep going. So now, assuming money's not an object, like what is the end goal? What are things do I want on my homestead? Um, I'm going to probably want some kind of livestock, right? I'm going to want things like that. I'm going to want to be able to have a garden. I'm going to need to be able to water this garden. I'm going to want livestock. Let's talk about that. So we could do like pigs, goats. Those are reasonably easy. They're kind of more adventurous than people start out. I think
Hmm.
people always start with chickens, right? You get
Yeah.
eggs right
That's
away.
always that's always the go-to. Start with the chick.
Butchering chickens is pretty easy, kind of, it can definitely be done. If you're not willing to butcher a chicken, maybe homesteading isn't right for you. Okay.
That's not, yeah, it's not the right move.
Maybe get a good job.
Yeah.
All right. So next, I got chickens. Then I think the next easiest thing, rabbits are pretty freaking easy. Um,
Hmm.
rabbits are meat that keep reproducing. They are reasonably inexpensive. Um, chickens, not so bad for meat, and they do reproduce on their own. There are some tricks to getting there on your own with getting, self-sufficient where you're not buying chicks at Tractor Supply or whatever. Although they're not too expensive to do that either. You buy it at the right time. But, and, talk to your neighbors, get to know your community and be reliant on your neighbors. That's, I think, a big thing. Uh,
Yeah. I know, like just dealing with the people, friends and family, that there's a lot of people that are, I have too many chickens. You want to take a couple of chickens, you want to, you know what I mean? It's not a huge expense. The huge expense is getting prepared to have chickens, you know. The huge
and
expense is the coop, the setup. The chickens aren't the issue.
And it doesn't have to be as pretty as some people, make it out to be. You can go pretty simple. One of the things I have some books that I really love from back in the day. One is the Have More Plan that I looked online on Amazon. It was like $12. It's from 1973, and they talk about how you can be self-sufficient on an acre and grow your own stuff and whatever. Uh, a book that's actually a lot more thorough, but a little more expensive is The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. This
Yeah.
one, I looked, if you're just looking at the cover going, oh, that's it. That one looked like it was like $75 now, but there's a $25 option. It's by John Seymour. Just anything by John Seymour, Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. That one takes you through the butchering process, how to lay out your property, how to, cycle through crops. You don't want to grow the same thing in the same spot every year, that kind of stuff. He takes you through that, how to build quality fencing, how to, secure your livestock, how to deal with predators, he has all kinds of basics that just take you through. I think we did an episode on like setting up a log cabin or building a log cabin, things like that. And there's a whole bunch of books on building your own structure too that get me super excited and whatever. If you can get somewhere without building codes, um, you can do amazing things. But as far as setting up your homestead and building animal shelters and that kind of thing, and on the cheap, using materials that you have around,
Hmm.
um, that Self-Sufficient Life book is excellent and can really, help you out. Another one that's I found super, super awesome and exciting is The Secret Garden of Survival uh, by Rick Austin there. He's a guy who does prepper camp. And that was actually my introduction to him was the book, and he was on like Doomsday Preppers or something, but I had seen the book and then checked him out on Doomsday Preppers. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. He had lots of ways to like integrate. He was kind of like that Three Sisters kind of thing where plants supporting plants and building together. He's got a lot of neat stuff in there. That book was a little expensive, like $29, but it's got the pictures and the detail that it actually pretty helpful, it gets you there.
Hmm.
I would kind of start to look and check out, like, fantasize with these books about what you want. It'll kind of give you a better feeling of before I picked out the property. Now, again, you already have a property, no problem. You just start to, how do I integrate it? But if you knew what you wanted to lay out and what was going to be important, like having water near the garden is a big thing, right? A lot of
Right.
people who are like, oh, I made the garden way back in the corner so it'd be secret, but now I don't have water over
Right.
there. That's people don't think of these things sometimes. Um, is it going to be near the house where I can keep predators away? Right. Like that kind of
Hmm.
thing. The wife went out yesterday and was like, oh, there's a giant deer standing in the middle of the garden and just hopped out like nothing. And I'm like, yeah, they do that. And we have a pretty high fence, but yeah, who knows? Right. But that's what predators do. So you want to think about, like, are you going to want a smokehouse? We have a place like set up for like a butcher shop, right? Like you're still going to have to, even if it's multiple use spaces, you still need to think about how you're going to run your operation.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean you need a designated butcher shop and a designated, whatever, but you may need a room that you use for, this is our kitchen. We use for canning. We use for butchering. We use for whatever. I don't know that I'd want canning and butchering in the same place because one, you're trying to keep super clean. One, you're trying to, you know,
Hmm.
get a little messy in. But what I'm saying is you need to kind of integrate things and work together. 5 Acres in Independence, another book that I actually have and is pretty good. Slow Burn recommended that one. Um, there is a lot of good information out there. But the thing is, you need to think about all the practical things. Now, one of the cool things about the modern world is after COVID, so many people are able to work from home and take their lifestyle back a little bit. Uh, there was a book, Tim Ferriss. What's his book? He has a 4 Hour Work Week. He has a book there, and it's kind of about how you can get more efficient and more, sustainable and with your job where you can free up time. Now, I'm not trying to get you into the whole self-help thing and whatever. That's not my point. My point is there are tools out there to help you stream down your life where you can thin it out into something where it's a little more easy. I'm not saying you have to be laptop billionaire or something. I'm just saying there are ways. Now, there are also ways to make money in the country, right? You can buy a tractor and cut firewood for people. You can get a sawmill for $3,000 that you can cut boards. There's things you can do on your property, but you're not going to live your $150,000 lifestyle while you're living off the land. But if you're willing to focus on, hey, we bought a piece of land in the middle of nowhere, so it was super cheap, and we just need to put clothes on everybody and stay warm and whatever, it's doable.
Hmm.
It's just maybe not doable with a new iPhone every 3 years and a leased car.
Right.
Now, again, you could set up the job that's remote and streamlined that you could do the car, but it's how much time you want to focus on family and off-grid living and sustainable and nutrition and value, not feeding your family poison. As much as you want to focus on that versus the other, you need to decide what's right for you and how much time and effort you're willing to work.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, is that your take on it, Kevin, or how are
Yeah.
you?
I mean, it really, you know, running a homestead or, just keeping animals in a garden.
It's work.
It's a lot of work. You've got chores in the morning before you go to work, and you got chores when you get home. So you want to streamline as much as possible. My recommendation would be throw your TV in the garbage. But I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
I just,
Um,
yeah, I just watched a movie. I think it was called Great Hands, and it was the Ben Carson story.
oh yeah.
And it was funny because I had seen a clip on, how we scroll through Facebook or TikTok or something
Hmm.
else with videos, right? And a video came up and it was a picture of his mom like working as a cleaning lady, and she sees a guy who's super successful who she's cleaning for, and she's like, well, you have this huge library. How many books of these have you read? And he's like, oh, probably like 80% of them. And she just goes home and looks at her kids and is like, you know what? You can each watch one show a week and that's it. And you're going to spend the time at the library and start writing book reports. And they're like, no. And she's like, yeah, this is how it's going to be. And or she starts out with like 2 shows a week and they're like, that sounds horrible. What, how would we even do that? And then when they start reading, they're like, oh, it's awesome. And both become very successful people coming from struggling in school. And it was that decision to stop watching TV. Now, again, I'm not telling you how to live. I don't really care what you do. You make you happy, right? I want you to listen to at least one podcast a week. I mean,
That's right.
that's where I would draw the line, right?
Mhm.
One podcast a week and, get all your information right there. That's the key. You don't worry about it. Me and Kevin will do the research so you don't have to. No, I don't know. You guys do you, right? That's not my point. I'm not telling anybody how to live, but I do know that in my personal life, I waste a lot of time that I could be devoting to other stuff, and staring at TV and screens is a big part of it. However, the upside, I will say, almost 99% of all TV or podcast listening I do is while I'm at work and getting paid for it. So, hey, you do you, right? I mean, you got to fill the time somehow, right?
Mhm.
So if you could work out a job like that, I'd recommend it. I'm just saying, like, actually all my podcast editing and my happens while I'm at work. I mean, my boss probably shouldn't hear about this, but I'm just saying that's when it happens. Like when I go to work today, the computer that I'm recording this on right now is going with me, and the editing will happen while I'm there, and all that'll get done. So you may want to find a way to work that into your lifestyle. I do, however, work way too much that keeps me away from my property and doing the stuff that I want to do. So again, there's always things, new projects you could be doing on the homestead. But so we talked about farm animals, pigs, goats, chickens, ducks you can do. They're kind of messy. I did turkeys this year. Turkeys were a big pain in the butt. They smelled and they were expensive for me to raise.
Yeah.
Even my buddies who did them for like the 4th year in a row and tried to do them efficient, they're still over $75 a piece to raise is what he experienced. I'm
Mm.
sure there's a way with scraps that you can figure out how to do it, whatever. You get them on a natural diet that you're growing and whatever. But I know if you're doing it with store-bought feed, you're really not raising a turkey to 25 pounds without 22 pounds, whatever, without like $75 in feed. Now you might be able to do $40 in feed and raise it to 17 pounds or something. I don't know, but you get the idea, right? It's all relative. So think about that. I know pigs, it's a lot easier to feed scraps, that kind of stuff. Goats, it's a lot easier to get away with them eating off the land kind of thing. Rabbits, pretty good if you're efficient on actually butchering them as soon as they're ready. And you're willing to collect some greens around the yard and stuff like that. You can get pretty cheap rabbit meat and pretty cost efficient. But if you're just going to be store-bought hay and store-bought feed, then it gets a little hairy, like probably $6 a pound or something. If you're, not that much, maybe $4 a pound, but there's
Mhm.
still a little bit of work. So something good there. Kevin, any crops? Like, I mean, I didn't want to get too in the weeds on what you should grow because, like I said, these books just lay it out. Like the Have
Right.
More plan, it has an exact year planning schedule. And it's like for a family of 4, you need to do exactly this. You need so many carrots, you need so many turnips, you need to. Now, obviously, you pick and choose what your family likes to eat or whatever, but there's a lot of root vegetables and seasonal planting that you can do.
Yeah, and
But
that would be something that I would prioritize is something that you can you're harvesting at different times. Greens are good for that, spinach and lettuces, because they grow fast and you can replant, 2 or 3 times a year. Uh, Cucumbers, same way, but also don't grow stuff that you're not
you're
going
not
to eat.
gonna
Because my
exactly.
neighbor sends over 2 or 3 eggplants a week, and I don't eat eggplants, and they don't eat eggplant. Why are you growing eggplants? Nobody likes egg. They taste terrible. They're awful. They're the worst vegetable.
My wife, dude, we have had eggplant in like every meal. Now, luckily, I work at dinner time, so I'm not home
So
eating
you don't
dinner.
have to deal with
But
it.
I would say 4 out of 7 days a week, there is some kind of secret eggplant mixed in
Hmm.
to whatever they're cooking. There's a lot of secret eggplant. There's a lot of zucchini. Now, there are fun things with zucchini, but basically, it's like, oh, if you fry it, then it doesn't taste so bad. But
Right,
there's a
but
lot
that's
of things where you're like, if you fry it, it doesn't
yeah,
taste
not so
bad,
bad.
you know?
If I was going to eat worms, I would fry them.
Right.
Fry
Now,
it in bacon grease.
exactly. Long term, fruit trees, bees, these are the things, nut trees. Now that I'm down in the South, nut trees are a big thing. Now,
Hmm.
the big thing with trees is they take time to start producing. It's going to
Right,
be like 3, 4 years before you're getting a significant harvest, depending on the trees that you buy, right? I mean, you
right.
can buy pretty established trees. If you can find a property that's already got trees, you're way ahead of the game. Established trees. That was one of the things I hated about leaving New York was I had finally gotten my trees to where they're starting to produce.
Hmm.
Sure, the guy went and cut them all down because they were like in the middle of the yard, but
Right.
whatever. But I'm like, oh, I had gotten all these trees, growing, and that's how you end up. But yeah, trees are awesome because they do work without any effort, right? The first
Hmm.
couple of years, you got to really be maybe on top of watering them or whatever, depending on your environment. When things start to turn crappy and are hot too long. But so having, like I said, a good layout of your property, buy one of these books, go through it, think about it. We did an episode a while back on laying out your homestead. It was something about the soil that I did the extra show.
Hmm.
Uh, we had a guest on. I'll try and put a link to it. I forgot about the name is eluding me at the moment. But if you want to get deep into soil and that kind of stuff, I'll put a link in the show notes to that one. Um, but lay out your property and plan ahead is what I would say. But fruit trees, nut trees, bees, because you need some kind of sugar stuff. Um, but and think about the food. Think about what your family eats and what you can grow. Think about how you're going to rotate stuff. You change crops each year. You don't grow the same thing in the same spot. But there's some things you can repetitively plant. Think about how you do cover crop in the winter. Think
Hmm.
about, getting the implements, but it can all be done in stages. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 in day one, but it's cool if you have the property and the plan at day one, and then you can just keep adding on by importance for your family. And then
Hmm.
obviously the long-term prepping stuff of, hey, do I already have some kind of long-term food storage? Do I have a way to secure it? Did I pick out a property that's going to be overrun by gangs in 2 weeks? All this depends on how close you are to the city, but it depends on your budget, what you're willing to give up to, how remote you're willing to be. You're going to get cheaper and cheaper property and less restrictive government rules the further outside the city you are.
Hmm.
But and it might free up your budget, but again, you're not able to earn money like you'd want to be. We looked at a property in like Boone County, Tennessee, right? Or in the Boone National Forest or something. And this thing wasn't near anything, but it was like an awesome hillside. I think they probably got hammered in Helene here,
Hmm.
to be honest, gotten it. But the way it was, this property had like 30, 40 fruit trees on it. It was like a trailer, but it was like 39 grand. It was totally private. The guy had the whole homestead going on, and it would have been awesome. And I'm like, oh, I could go there, pay cash, be king,
Just move right in. Yeah.
just move right in. But I'm like, but I'd never earn money again. And I
Mhm.
still have to appease the whole family, the kids, the wife, everybody has to be, you don't want to give up life if that's what you want. But if your family goal is, hey, let's live like Little House on the Prairie and have our own thing, then that would have been sweet.
Mhm.
It just,
Right.
you have to decide the sacrifices you're willing to make as a family and go to it from there. So that's what I got. I think that's how the direction you'd want to move if you were looking for a sustainable life. And I would say when it comes time to vote, vote for freedom. That's all. Again, I know that freedom's not on the ballot. I've seen what's out there. But what I would tell you is weigh out what's going to give me the most choices and the most free stuff. And I'm not sure that the answer is, well, if I had 25 grand, I could go buy freedom. But maybe it is. I don't
Maybe
know.
it is.
You
Who
decide
knows?
what's right for you, right?
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm here to give you options. And that's what it comes down to. And hopefully share some of my knowledge of things I've experienced along the way of making my own homestead, because I
Mhm.
do. I have a homestead of my own, but it isn't exactly Little House on the Prairie. It's and my neighbor apparently is going to be like an ATF agent. So, we all make mistakes, right? Who knows about the property? You can only do what you're going to do. But with that, I would say you have questions, concerns, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Make sure you like and subscribe, leave comments. With that, I would say stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.